Welcome to Replayable, where we go into depth on our favorite tabletop games that keep us coming back again and again. I'm the start player Todd, and today I'm joined by David and Paul. For our 39th episode, we are aliens, looking to build a space station in a newly discovered solar system with the yellow dwarf star. That would be ours. In Space Station Phoenix. It was designed by Gabriel J. Cohn with artwork by Martin Hoffman and Klaus Stefan. It was originally released by Rio Grande Games in 2022. You guys ready to burn your own ships?
I'm ready to make a Startopia.
A Startopia? Yes! That's a great game.
Well, hearing that description, I honestly thought we were building a space station in the middle of the Arizona desert, but I'll just change my notes around before we move on.
Oh, you said Arizona desert. Do you mean New Mexico?
I mean Phoenix, Arizona. Space Station Phoenix. It's not a great joke. It's better if it just rides off into the sunset.
Since we're the aliens, I thought it meant like Roswell.
I'll save that joke for Space Station Tucumcari. That one's in New Mexico.
That's not the geography degree.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
Degree? Yeah, because I've been to Tucumcari, New Mexico. I got a speeding ticket in Tucumcari.
Did you?
Yeah, and that's not even a metaphor. I really...
Space Station Phoenix is a worker placement and resource management game set in one of Earth's possible futures. Players start with the best production engine they will ever have and proceed to break it down part by part. As the game progresses, their actions get more efficient, but the number of ways to take those actions starts to diminish. All right, so this game was released in 2022. Clearly we enjoy this game, but was this the space game that got overlooked that year? When you look at the list of other ones that came out, there's ISS Vanguard and Planet Unknown. Both are really popular. Starship Captains also came out, and a game I'd never heard of called First Rat. Have you guys heard of First Rat?
No.
Back to what I was saying then, is this the 2022 game that got overlooked?
I had never heard of it until I played it on Board Game Arena in 2023.
Wait, is that right? So I seem to remember I heard about it as like a forgotten gem. And I thought I mentioned it in our Slack channel, and then you looked into it and then bought it. But so I thought you bought it unplayed, but you did play it on BGA
I
first?
played it online, and then I purchased it, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was definitely overlooked. I was looking at the numbers on BGA. Mm-hmm. This game has 11,000 plays since I don't know how long it's been on BGA, maybe not too long. 11,000 seems like a lot, but Beyond the Sun has 187,000 plays on BGA. Or Darwin's Journey, which might even still be in beta, has 18,000 plays. And still there's only 11,000 plays of Space Station Phoenix. So people be sleeping on SSP.
It is a hotel.
Wait a minute. Are we actually doing the hoteliers in space thing?
I am. To me, that's part of the theme.
I mean, I thought the aliens were our indentured servants.
Well, we can't live on the planet of Earth, so we got to live in the hotel above it and visit from time to time.
I mean, to talk about the space theme, so space is the new colony and shipping spices theme, right? Because we don't do those themes anymore because obviously they're problematic.
Right.
But now when we go into space, we can colonize, we can do whatever we want when we're in space because it's not real. Of course, in the future, they're going to look back at us and say, look at what we've done. Look at how we treated space and, overcame these, pristine planets.
Yeah, but this is almost reverse, right? Because you're aliens coming to build your space station around Earth.
So we're colonizing Earth?
No,
we're not colonizing right now. We're
putting a hotel above it in orbit.
Yeah, we're observing, and then we're occasionally doing a Terran expedition for resources and people in spacesuits, apparently.
Right. The humans want to come stay at our hotel.
Yeah, that's probably the safest way to think about it.
What really works for you about this game? Why do we like it so much?
Well, it's very hard for me to put a pin on that because there's so many things I do like about it. And I think it's a combination of each person having very short, small turns, but doing them again and again and again. And then how the game is almost entirely about scarcity. And in the beginning, it's scarcity of resources. And at the end, it's scarcity of actions. And it has a very nice story arc that takes you through this shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't feel the story arc as much. It does feel like an abstracted game, because I don't feel the theme in there very strongly. But one of the things I really like, why this game works for me, is I like the scope. I think it's a really tight game. There's no bloat in here. And I think a lot of games we see that are around this weight, we see this kind of extra mechanism or extra board off to the side that feels like bloat, that kind of takes away from the core of the game. And I think some people complain about the diplomacy track, but I think it's simple. It doesn't feel like a side thing. It feels integrated as, as part of the core of the game. And it's right in my sweet spot right now, where it's going to play in, 90 to 120 minutes, and every turn counts. And it's a great weight and time ratio that I'm really enjoying right now. There's a list of other games that are hitting it like this, and this is right in there.
Yeah, I think people should possibly give Space Station Phoenix some extra credit for avoiding crowdfunding and just being one of those old-fashioned spend years and years designing and refining a game before you finally release it.
Right?
Yeah. That's probably part of what gives it kind of an old school feel. I wouldn't call this OG, but it does have a little more of a traditional feel than some sort of, huge eye candy, fully bloated, $100 game.
Although this is a little close to that.
Is it?
There's a lot of components, and I think MSRP is around $70.
Yeah, there's a lot of wooden bits. That's true.
And cardboard bits.
Yeah.
There are. And as far as the art goes, this is interesting. If it feels reminiscent, it's because we've seen space art specifically from Rio Grande Games. And I don't know if, Martin Hoffman and Klaus Stefan are just in the stable there at Rio Grande Games, but they did the art for Race for the Galaxy. And here they are working on the art for Space Station Phoenix.
I didn't notice it until you put it in the show notes, but
yeah, it totally makes sense.
The idea that the aliens are coming to Earth and they're bringing their ships with them. And then as the game goes on, you need this precious resource to help build your station, i.e. metal. And you're going to dismantle some of your ships to be able to use their metal to create sectors on your space station.
Sometimes all of them.
And sometimes all of them, right? Have you ever played a game where you were dismantling your actions so that your actions were getting funneled towards the end of the game?
I could not.
Yeah, Dave, could you think of one?
I couldn't think of anything, but I think, obsolescence is not uncommon. We do have a lot of worker placement games where early buildings or early spots kind of become obsolete as the game goes on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But usually in those cases, we're building over the top of them. So we're changing as we go. I could not think of anything where you just start with a complete array of all the possible actions. And by the end of the game, there's going to be 9, 10, 15 fewer of them.
Right.
And it's not necessarily obsolescence, because sometimes you're tearing down some of your best ships. They're going to give you the best metal.
Right. And you might be able to get along just fine with what your opponents may still have available, which was another interesting one. Like in a method similar to Le Havre, right? Where I can use the buildings you've created. I got to pay you to use them, but I can use your buildings in Space Station Phoenix.
Exactly.
If I've dismantled my trade ship, I can use yours, Dave. I just have to pay a premium to you to be able to use it.
And hope I don't dismantle mine.
Well,
right.
You're not allowed to, because he's used it.
Well, yeah, in that same turn, yes.
Right.
Well, that idea, it was actually a paradigm shift for me in this game. Early on, when we would do the ship draft, I think I want these great ships. I want that double diplomacy ship because it's awesome. Or I want the build where you get 2 free medals or whatever because it's awesome. And then I would buy those and then never get to use them. And it made me realize I don't necessarily want to own the best ships. I want the player to my right to own the best ships, because those are the actions I'm going to be using quite a bit whenever that person takes an income phase. And then I have all these great options available to me. But you guys are using up my good ships, and I'm also really drafting them to res them down later.
Depending on your base. But yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. So the player to your right, it's not just a function of having access to them as soon as they become available. You also need to be able to afford the cost, right?
Yep.
And in Space Station Phoenix, you use gems. Now, what does gem stand for, by the way?
I don't know. It's currency. I think the theme is thin here, but
yeah, we'll get to that. But
it's random currency.
But it's like capital. It's GEM, so it's some kind of acronym.
Yeah.
Like Galactic Entertainment Money. I don't know. Galactic Expedition Money. There, let's just run with that. But you have to have enough gems to be able to use those great ships once the player to your right has taken an income. Do you take that into consideration now instead of running your gems down
Todd,
to zero?
The acronym is Galactic Exchange Mineral.
Oh, thank you. So do you take that into consideration? Like, do you take income early to make sure that you always have enough to take advantage of those ships when they become available? If you take yourself down to, say, 3 gems left, well, now I can take an income safe in the knowledge that, let's say, Paul isn't able to use my ships because he won't be able to afford them.
It's a cat and mouse game, right?
Yeah.
That decision has to be made each and every turn. And depending on everybody else's position, you might decide one way or the other.
Right.
Yeah, that timing is part of the game. In fact, we're in the middle of a game online that I think I misread the timing on that because we're in a situation where pretty much all the ships had been used. There were maybe 1 or 2 dismantle ships out there, but nothing to dismantle because they were all that's left. So I thought I'm going to be wise and I'm going to take an income turn, which sets me up to be the first one who's ready to take all your ships after you guys take income turns. But as soon as I took that income turn, you guys started jumping on my ships and planning that timing out, like Paul said, that cat and mouse, that's kind of part of the fun.
Yeah, well, the game we're playing, I think the reason it blew up in your face is because we're all pretty high on the diplomacy tracks.
Yeah.
And so every action means we're all making money.
We're all flushed with gems, yeah.
Right. So let's talk about the diplomacy track or the bureaucracy track. We'll get to the bureaucracy piece in a second. This is another feels fresh item to me. Have we seen this idea before where you're able to invest in a tech that allows you to capitalize on other players' turns in this same fashion?
I mean, lots of games ever since Puerto Rico have had everybody do something when one player, the main player, takes an action. This just allows each and every one of us to choose how much benefit we want for each one.
Well, I think what feels new here is which tracks you move up is elective. Mm-hmm. So usually when we've seen parasiting onto actions or worker placement spaces, when you're just kind of glomming onto those to get what you can out of them, often it's because it's a certain card that you played or building that you built or something where you had to have the card, like in San Juan, I had to have the card that's going to let me take advantage of every time you take this roll or something like that. But in this case...
the gold mine.
Yeah. But in this case, when I take diplomacy, I get to sit back and think about it and go, well, what's going to be used more from here on out? Or what's going to be, nobody's disabling their ships yet. Or maybe late in the game, there'll be less disabling or whatever. I would love to see an action breakdown as in a typical game, how many of the main actions, the number of times they're often chosen. But we played a few games ago and Paul got on early on Expedition.
No, that was me.
Oh, it was. And it just felt like it paid and paid and paid all game long and never stopped. And maybe that was just the game we were playing. But I was over there on like build or something like that. I'm thinking everybody wants to build 9 times. There's 3 of us. That's 27. This is going to be a gold mine.
Right.
And it paid, but not like Expedition paid.
Right.
But that's your choice that you get to go wherever you want. There's some competition, some brinksmanship on getting on those, which it makes it a fun little side game. But that's what feels different about it is it's your choice.
Right. There's another aspect, and in fact, it reminds me of something I need to do in the game that we're in right now. If you are the highest on the track, then you get the benefit of the level at which you've reached, which at the 3rd level, you are getting a resource, right? At the 4th level, you're getting 2 choices. But if someone is tied with you, you don't get that benefit of the level. You get the benefit of the level below you. And so it turns into this interesting thing where like Paul's getting all of this benefit for being in this game higher on the, what is it, Paul, the trade track?
Possibly.
Yeah. And someone's got to get up there and make it so that you have to reinvest in diplomacy if you want to keep that level of benefit. Otherwise, drag you down to the level of the rest of us.
I think what you're saying is getting to the lead is profitable, but taking the lead from somebody else is like taking one for the team.
Yeah.
but needs to be done. Otherwise, you could potentially run away with the.
Well, you do it.
Right.
You go take it from them. That's the thing. It's,
Yeah.
somebody has to jump on that grenade.
Right.
Those tracks remind me a little bit of the faction tracks in Dune. There isn't the same sort of reward structure there, but there are rewards by kind of moving up those tracks, and you're kind of choosing which tracks you're moving up.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Dune Imperium.
Also, and you're not going to like this one as much, it reminds me of Yunnan when you're looking for the provost favor. I forget what it's called, but there's Reputation, the Reputation track. That has a similar feel to where everybody I'm above, I get to do better things. And then when people catch up to me, they get to kick me around, and it kind of takes away my power a little bit.
Huh. That's a game?
Yeah. So Yunnan's a great game. I don't know if you've heard.
So, listeners, that's a callback to episode 8. Okay, so I understand what you're saying. Dune Imperium was a better analogy. So let's talk about the engine building in this game. The idea of building sectors, and one of the decisions that you have to make, and sectors are built from the smallest closest to the hub, and then they get progressively larger up to 3 levels as you are building outwards. And they support different races of aliens, and so they're color coded and have different symbols on them. But as you are welcoming residents into these sectors, you are going to be unlocking additional powers that are going to be either unique, or at least the combination is unique on each sector. And that is how you do your engine building. How do you feel about that style of engine building? Is it too opaque? Is it just right? Is it too easy? What are your thoughts about that?
I'm sorry, I got stuck on your word choice.
Which one?
Opaque and easy. I've never thought about it like that. It's interesting because the publications talk about how you're destroying your action engine, but it's exactly like you said. You're creating a bonus and income engine with the hoteling sectors that you're building out. And to me, that's almost half the game. That's like in Settlers of Catan, picking where you want your settlements to be. You are choosing the path that your game's going to take by the sectors that you grab. And props to the designer, there's only one sector of each type for each player. So if 2 of you want the same sector, you better go for it. Yeah. One of you is going to be crying.
Right? What do you think, Dave?
It is engine building, you're right, because you're building it up, and as you man those spaces, they're going to give you something in your income phase. It doesn't quite feel the same as when I think of engine building, because my workers
they also
don't
give you
go
bonuses. There. A lot of them give you bonuses to actions you take. It's not just income.
Yeah, that's true. But when I think of the ships as my engine, and that is actually diminishing, whereas the sectors that we build on are maybe sweetening a little bit of what's there, or giving me income, or doing something else for me. So that's the engine. It's just what's unique here is it's not in the place you normally find the engine, I think, in a game like this. It's not where you place your workers specifically.
Well, I see it as 2 different engines, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think about starting with your hub, to where you think you're going to develop that diplomacy track, to how you want to improve the actions you plan on taking, whether they're on your ships. Obviously, on your ships, you're going to have the most control over them, or your neighbor ships. How do I want to tune or adjust how those behave? For example, Dave, the 2 sectors that I wanted to get during this game, and I succeeded, I don't think it's going to win the game for me, is I wanted to be able to add a die to when I do the expeditions, and I wanted to be able to keep a die. So now my expedition action is very efficient. And I don't think I'm the highest anymore because Paul did the increase on all 4 tracks sector. But for a long time, I was using that to then go do expeditions and be sure to get an extra resource each time I did that. And that was like my plan for the game. I do look at the sector selection as being a component of your engine.
I mean, would we say it's path dependency?
Well, we like saying that, so sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because you're looking for what synergizes with your hub, which early sectors are going to synchronize well with latter sectors or other colors of sectors.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it also feeds into how many of each alien there are.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yep.
Because that's randomly determined, right?
Right. So in a 3-player game, you could have like 18 brown, 18 green, and only 8 pink. And it's like, okay, do I want to try and get the pink majority right away, or do I want to let the other guys fight for it and just focus on getting the sectors that help my synergies?
Right. That's actually a good thing to talk about. On top of everything else, there's a majority aspect to this game, right? Who has the most of each of the different races, and there are 5 different races. How easy is it for you to keep track of what's going on in this game?
It's not bad. It's all
That's
out
almost
there.
a non sequitur.
It's not, though.
Well, I think the game allows you to slowly, as you play more and more times, track more and more. Your first couple plays, you could just focus on yourself and not worry about what your opponents are doing.
Right.
I didn't start looking at the alien count until the end of the game, our first few plays. Now I'm very early on thinking like, am I going to make a run at the triangle aliens or
Right.
Yeah, so I think the way it's designed, it allows players to just give themselves tunnel vision and still have a good time, and then slowly take the blinders off after you've played it, 10 times and see the whole thing.
So you don't think it's overwhelming?
Well, let me ask this. Should the count be hidden? And the reason I ask is I almost don't like that it's calculable, that we have, say, 20 pink aliens, that, you buy some and you buy some. Now I know exactly how many I need to get the majority. And then when things become calculable, that's when AP starts to come along. That what if there's a cloud and we actually don't know how many pink aliens are going to be in the game?
Well,
I don't know how you would do that in bags.
I don't think you could have an end-game condition for aliens if you didn't know how many there were.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be frustrating.
But by the way, in the physical game, there's no tracker to tell you.
No, you have to count them.
Right.
It's all out there. But like Paul was saying, you're just getting a bunch of aliens, and at some point mid-game, a little past midway, then it's pretty easy to calculate. There's 10 left. I've got X, you've got Y, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's all there. Online on BGA, it's much easier because it's, spelled out for you.
Right.
I mean, personally, I don't think there's too much to keep track of.
I think it's close. I think there's been a trend in games where they're adding complexity and things and to keep track of, whether it's journals and pages and species and stamps and tents and all that stuff, or if it's, in this case, 5 different races plus sectors plus the capacity you have, because that's the other thing that's kind of unique about this. It's not just how many aliens there are and who has the most of a given type, but if someone's going to make a run at you for having the majority, they have to have the capacity to house them first. Right. So you can see the attempt coming in advance. If Dave's vulnerable in the pink hexes and I have births for another 4, he can see that I might take it away from him. For me, this game teeters on the balance. Like, it's still fun. It didn't go too far, but it does feel like a modern game in the sense of there is quite a bit to track.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, 5 races, yes, you're right. That does make it quite a bit. It's, there's 3 of them that are pretty easy to track. And then, by the way, there's the gold ones. And don't forget the humans. So, yeah, right. That does, especially because, like in the game we're playing right now, I'm very focused on.
I don't know if it's that important, though. The majority bonus is just 10 points for first. I guess I don't even think about the gold aliens or the humans until the game is coming close to an end, just because they're so expensive.
Well, there's 75 points up for grabs, right?
Is that what it is?
You got 5 races. Whoever has the most in each gets 10. Whoever's next most gets 5.
Right.
So it's a total of 75 points up for grabs. And yeah, I mean, our games are scoring in at 150, 160. Yeah, you probably should be looking at 25 points or more coming from those. So it's actually not a huge percentage of your total score.
Well, then you'd have to look at what's the margin of victory. If we were averaging scores that were within 15 points of each other, then suddenly those become pretty meaningful.
So, Todd, would you levy the same criticism against Agricola and Caverna?
That there's too much to track?
Yes.
That is really interesting.
Because I think Space Station Phoenix is right there, same line as Agricola and Caverna as far as how much stuff there is to track.
Well, the only difference is that in Agricola, I don't care how many cows you have.
Right.
It's just how many cows I have. To me, it's more like Alhambra. How many white buildings do you have? Can I shore this up? Can I lock it up by getting a 5th white building or whatever it is?
Right.
it has the same feel as Alhambra, which I don't find overwhelming.
Well, because each alien is worth 2 points, I don't think majority is paramount.
Right.
I think it's just icing on the cake. Getting the aliens is the cake.
Well, but in games like this, though, with 75 points up for grab, if you don't get your fair share, somebody else will, and that could
just by focusing on getting aliens, no matter who they are, you're bound to get some of those majority points.
Well, but in the game we're playing now, I've locked up majority of the triangle aliens. So for me to get more triangle aliens doesn't really make much sense unless
They're
the
2
sector
points
that
each.
I have them on. Right, but so are the pink ones that I could be getting and competing now in pink.
Right. It's interesting. And no, Paul, I wouldn't level the same thing at Agricola because there aren't majorities for each of the things. Like there's no one gets extra points for having the most sheep.
So because Agricola is more heads down,
Yeah.
you don't have the same critique. But in my opinion, you can play Space Station Phoenix that way with no issue, where you just ignore the majorities. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I find Agricola harder in that matter. Like, oh, I got to get up to 3 sheep. Like here, I just buy an alien. It's easy to buy an alien. But now I'm going to get 3 sheep. I got to eat 2 of them. You know, like I find that harder to manage.
All right, let's go back and revisit a question I had, and it was about the level at which you take the income action. So for your turn, you're going to do nothing but flip your ships or clear everything off your ships so they're all available again, and then you're going to take your income phase, and how you generate income is dependent on your hub powers and the sectors that have aliens birthed in them, the ones that are occupied. How efficient are you trying to be in that? So compared to other games that have that kind of reset, so you're going to do nothing this action but reset.
It's
What are your
not a
thoughts
reset,
about that?
though. I see it as an income. So depending on my board, I mean, I'm in a game right now where I get 2 gems for every ship I have, and I've already built up several sectors. And so I take an income almost every other turn.
Just because it's giving you so many gems?
Yeah, and then I'll just use a trade ship to buy all the metal I need at 3-1.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So wait a minute, you're breaking my brain. I've never thought about this. So you are just, how many gems do you have?
Well, now when I take income, I earn like 27 on an income action, and then yeah, I spend about, I think I've set it up so I can buy 6 gems at 3 and then 1 gem at 2 because of one of the sectors I have. So I spend 20 to get 7 metal. And this is a special base that awards you 2 points for every ship that you have not destroyed at the end of the game.
Right.
But it's just, it's a very different way to play that I'm trying out, because it's like, oh, I'm going to take income as much as I can.
Well, your hub is telling you to play that way. You're listening to what the game's telling you.
Kind of, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I've always thought of it as a reset because I'm not doing anything except for clearing my ships so that I can take actions for the potential cheapest that they're going to be for me. And then I'm earning some money. I didn't think about continuing to do that every other turn.
Another thing to think about is nobody is making diplomacy income off of your income action. And if you've already set it up to earn points and resources, especially metal, when you take the income action, sometimes it can be beneficial. I think it's a mistake to think of it like the Anno 1800 festival, which is a loss of tempo.
It's definitely something I struggle with because my default mode is to be as efficient as possible. And I think income time, it's more about timing and maintaining your tempo with what you're trying to do or with what the other players are doing. So it's really tough for me to take income when I have plenty of gems. I have places I can go. They may not be the best places for me, but I can just keep riding this out and going places and spending my gems. And I think I end up riding this super efficient trail to mediocre actions rather than taking that income and then coming back with big turns.
That's a great way of putting it.
That's where I am on my learning curve with the game right now.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like in some ways, especially early on when you don't have a lot of manned sectors, it feels like a loss of tempo, like Anno 1800.
Early on, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. But when your sectors are an engine, sure, I can see that income phase it's fueling so much more than just, feeding you gems.
Right.
I think part of what we're getting here is this is what we look for in a game is, the layers of the onion, that this is a game. The more I play, the more I see that, there's quite a few paths to metal. In the first game, I thought you got to res all your ships and, get all your metal through your ships. And that's so difficult. Now I think, well, there's dice, there's exploring, there's, income on your sectors. There are a lot of ways to get.
There's even trade.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Another thing I really like in my current phase of the game are the food and water ships. because they do not trigger diplomacy bonuses, it feels like taking the prospector in Puerto Rico. I'm just I get something and nobody else does.
Oh, interesting.
And income kind of feels that way too.
Well, but other people aren't usually taking your ice and whatever it is, taking those ships of yours, right? You're not really getting the income out of those as you might another ship.
True. At least to date, very few people have given me the gems for just 4 or 5 food or 4 or 5 water.
Which I think goes back to the paradigm is your ships, are they for you or are they for income? A little bit of both. But if you're not getting any income at all, I don't know. I definitely hear you because we were talking about those kinds of ships before, and I definitely hear you on it. I'm just not fully sold on them yet. Though I sure complained a lot last time when I wasn't getting very many leaves. And if I would have just gone to one of those ships, that would have solved my problem. But I could not roll a leaf for the life of me.
I know, because if you roll the dice, that's another thing. I don't like dice rolling.
Yeah.
And so if I can just use a ship to get a guaranteed amount instead, I will.
I was even rolling like 11 dice, and I couldn't roll anything but water. And I was just stuck.
That was funny.
That was funny.
And all I had to do was go to one of those ships. Or maybe it was available in the initial draft and nobody took it.
It was available. And then I think after you went on this streak of bad luck, it was demolished and turned into metal.
Yeah.
What about the game ending criteria? So there are, I believe, 3 of them. One player has accumulated 40 or more points on the score track. One person, and this is the one that we typically run into, is somebody builds all 9 sectors in their station. And then the last one being there are 4 or fewer aliens left in the supply, and humans do not count towards that number.
Right.
So this is one of those games where the end game conditions are sort of in the player's hands. I mean, yes, each one of those things are going to be goals, but they're also hard to get to. How do you feel about the game ending conditions here?
Well, I actually don't remember. Can you remind me, is it a friendly ending or is it a kick in the pants ending?
It is the person who ended it does not get another action. Everybody else does.
Right.
Regardless of turn order?
Right. So it is very beneficial in the game to be the first player because odds are you're going to get one more turn than somebody else.
Right. Yeah, it's still a little bit of a jack in the box, which I like that, is that, we're kind of turning the crank and like, is it going to end now? Is somebody going to build their 9th sector? Is somebody going to, take that final alien or whatever it is? I like that tension that a game can build is, do I have 2 turns left or 3 or maybe just 1?
Right.
What I've found is people can actually rush to 40 points, especially if there's a sector that gives you +5 or +10 when you build it.
Yeah.
Right.
And you invest in some diplomacy early. It makes it interesting.
So do you feel like the ending conditions are right-sized for the game?
I think so. I think, especially after I learned that this game went through 8 years of development, some of the games I've been playing on BGA recently, all 3 endgame conditions have been triggered on the final round.
What?
Yeah.
So I have 3 at that point.
Okay, that is cool.
Somebody built their 9th sector, then somebody else got their 40th point, and then the last 2 players reduced the aliens down below 4.
I guess that's balance. So it does have that. I'd forgotten about that. When you build your 9th sector, you don't get to put any aliens there.
Unless it has a lightning bolt saying add 2 aliens.
Right. So it has that. That's like modern art, right? You played that last card and you ended it and you didn't get anything for it, but you're the one who ended it on my turn.
But the sectors are worth points, so you're still getting points for it.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
It's usually worth it.
Right.
Yeah.
So then let's move on to the prompts. The first one, weight and complexity on Board Game Geek's scale of 1 to 5, which also aligns with Board Game Arenas. How would you rate the weight of Space Station Phoenix? Paul?
So I rated a 3 because the amount you can do on each turn is extremely limited. You're activating one of the ships and you just do what it says, and then everybody reminds everybody else to trigger their diplomacy and you're done.
Exactly. Yeah. And I had it also at 3 because dismantling your ships does a good job of preventing option explosion as the game goes on.
Right. I think the barrier of entry feels like a 4, but after your first game, it settles in, and I also think it's a 3. It's pretty straightforward. Like I said earlier, there's not a lot of bloat. Everything makes sense. There's no extra thing where you're thinking about, what is this part of the board even here for? Why is this in the game? It's all relevant.
And the rule book has some recommendations on how to speed up play, and one of them is don't even bother with your action marker. Just put a gem on the ship that you're activating, put the rest in the bank that you owe, or give it to the player who owns the ship, and just speed on through.
Right.
Well, to support this kind of middling weight and complexity, so this is my new favorite metric, is on BGG, there are 116 threads, 34 of which, so 29.3% of the threads are rules questions. And I think in this modern era of gaming, that's not bad.
That's kind of low compared to other games on BGG. Yeah.
There's so many games that just have hundreds of threads on rules questions.
Darwin's Journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strategy. How much opportunity is there for strategy and long-term planning on the same scale?
I'm going to give this one a 5. I think right from the beginning, you're trying to map your path to the end, which is the sectors you want to buy, how much you're going to man them or alien them, as the case may be, which ships you're going to dismantle, like how you're going to get there. But I think right from the beginning, you're setting that path, and then you're zigging and zagging away to try to stick to that initial strategy. So I think it's very strategy driven, and your strategy changes from game to game based on your hub and based on what the other players are trying to do.
Interesting. Okay. Paul?
For me, it's a 4. I continue to struggle with the strategy. It's very hard for me to wrap my head around. There's a lot of path dependency in this game, which is one of the things I really love about certain board games. Things like, how long do I continue to invest in the diplomacy tracks? How am I going to get the resources I need, whether I'm going to use exploration ship or try not to? What sectors am I going to build? And who do I have to race to get them?
Yeah. I also had it as a 4 because starting with your starting hub capabilities, you need to take those into account. And then you choose complementary sectors, and then you try to get to them before your opponents, but you're not always going to be able to. I mean, there's just planning to start and there's planning throughout. And the only thing that holds me back is, at least so far, I've yet to play a game where I didn't have some reliance upon the expedition action. The games I've won in part because I had good rolls when I needed them to be, or at least I got enough variation in resources that when I wanted to do a trade and bring aliens in, I had a good balance between leaves and drops to do it. And there was enough luck there that for me, it's a 4. So then luck, how much do I think luck plays a factor? And even though I say I needed luck, for me, luck is a 1 here. By the way, there's no 0, right? And I know, Paul, you like to say, I can't answer 0, so it's a 1. This would be that for me.
Well, there are dice.
There are dice.
I don't see how you could say 0.
Right? So what did you have?
So on the last one, you both said 4, but your descriptions said 5 to me. That's what I heard.
Okay.
Even though your numbers were 4. But yeah, I also give it a 1. I think there's a way you can play it where you're depending on those dice rolls. And I think you shouldn't be doing that. You should find a way around that. And we talked about that a few games ago that we played where I just could not roll a certain resource. And I think that's my own fault for depending on rolling that certain resource, because they give you mitigation for things like that.
But even in that situation, so like expedition and trade go really well together then, because you can turn 2 of your resources into into a different resource.
Right.
So if all you're doing are rolling water, you could have turned 2 water into a leaf. Now, Is that better or worse to have to spend 2 resources to get the one you want than having to spend an action trying to have the opportunity to roll and then miss again? You know what I mean?
Well, I think you have to find another solution. What I ended up doing in that game is buying sectors that gave me the things that I wasn't rolling because I was, stocked on water or whichever one it was.
It was water.
And so I found a sector that's going to feed me leaves. And so I was able to achieve that balance. So I was able just to work around that, what felt like bad luck, that I don't think it was, I didn't win that game for other reasons.
Okay.
I found other ways to not win. So I don't know if I said it, but I'm going to give that a 1.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. I'm absolutely shocked you would say 1 after.
I think it was my own fault.
Lack of
depending
luck
on that.
You had.
It's like when you try to top deck, your whole game relies on a top deck and you lose and you say, I had bad luck. It's like, well, then don't depend your whole game on a top deck. I depended way too much on those dice and I should have found a solution earlier before I ran myself into trouble. So I fully say that was my bad play and not bad luck.
Okay. I think there is some luck in this game, so I rated a 2. 1, there's expedition dice, and 2, I'm not sure what else to call frequently being 1 gem short or having no construction ships available on my turn.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then theme. How much do you think the theme has been integrated with this game? Same scale, 1 to 5. Paul?
Yeah, the theme has actually grown on me the more I've played it, so it's a 5 now. I just get into the whole, I'm a hotelier in space, come and stay at my place. It's almost like Space Station Tycoon.
Right?
Maybe I'm missing out on part of the game. Maybe I'm not getting as much enjoyment as I should. I have this as a 3. It feels pretty abstracted. These could be buildings, sectors, roads, and then they could be anything. Even at the beginning, we're like, wait, are we the humans or are we the alien? It's all unclear to me.
Vacationing.
But is that even from the website, from the back of the box, or that's just see? We're making up our own theme.
That's how I interpret the website.
Yeah, okay.
Also, did you ever play Startopia?
No.
This is Startopia, the board game, in a way.
That's right.
Yeah. I think Al has logged an obscene amount of time.
Yeah, like 2,000 hours.
2,000 hours playing Startopia. Wow. Yeah.
From the game from 2001, yeah.
Well, I also had it as a 5. Same thing.
Have you guys played Beyond the Sun?
Yes, I think this has more theme.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't know what more you're looking for. If you're building out a space hotel and you're inviting multiple races to live in it, and they each need their own sector because they have their own environmental needs. I mean, what more are you looking for here? Would little plastic spaceships make you feel better? If we played it with Lego bricks, so you could dismantle them and then build your little hotel as you went, would that be better?
I'm listening.
And that's why I don't think it could be anywhere argument works, Dave, because where else are you going to take the very ships that you use to do things and then tear them apart to build, your structure? You're not going to do that if you're somewhere planet side and you're building out roads.
It could do a Mad Max theme, maybe.
Oh, yeah, there you go. No, I do like that part of the theme is that you're bringing your metal with you, and it's a ship to get you there that you get some use out of, but now it's time to repurpose that ship into metal for the space station. I actually really do like that portion of it.
Okay. So what did you give it? You said a 3, right?
I said a 3, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. Okay. So favorite player count. What is the game best played at?
All of them. But I think I enjoy it most at 3-player.
Okay. Why?
Well, it's primarily because of playing time. I think playing time is player dependent. So at 3-player, you're getting reduced player time and you're still having multiplayer mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, you're still having the multiplayer chaos that is not there at 2-player.
Yeah, I said the same thing at 3. At 4 is a little bit long and a little too chaotic. In that case, when I take my income phase, my good ships are definitely not going to be available when it comes back to me. Or a very, very good chance they won't be. It's the game state is going to change quite a bit by the time it comes back to me. And 4 is fine, but 3 feels just right. Really sweet spot for this one.
All right. And I guess I'm the dissenting opinion on this one. I had 4 because I actually like being forced to use more of other players' ships and budgeting that into the game. And there's more.
I love 4-player. Yeah.
Yeah. 4-player is great. Since we had to choose.
Yeah.
But the diplomacy track is more important, right?
Far more important than 4-player.
Because now you have 3 turns between your turns. So there's plenty of opportunity to be gaining rewards off that diplomacy track.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Paul said it perfectly, right? It's like, okay, I'm taking my turn. Everybody take your diplomacy bonus. Like that has just become our mantra with this game.
We still have to do it literally every time. And then still someone will forget.
Right. Because they were paying attention to something else at that moment and didn't hear the reminder.
Yeah.
Okay. So least favorite player count. So still within the published range, which is 2 to 4 on this game.
Probably 2-player. It mostly turns into an abstract game, and the diplomacy track almost doesn't matter at 2-player. I mean, I've lost games online where my opponent never took the diplomacy action.
Yeah, for those things, same reason.
Yeah. Well, and I also say 2 because I don't like majority scoring with only 2 players. I don't like the zero sum of that. I like a 3rd or 4th player in there. If I don't get it, my number one opponent, is definitely going to get it in 2 players. In 3-4 players, that's going to get distributed out a little bit more. So in this case, those 75 points up for grabs in 2-player, you'd better get half of those or more, because whatever you don't get, your direct opponent does get. And that makes it not quite as fun.
Right. Okay. So now actual playing time, because boxes can lie. And on this one, it says 60 to 120. What are your thoughts about that as an estimate for the amount of time to be played?
That's the dream.
30 minutes per player is what they're saying.
After several plays, it's still about 45 minutes per player in my experience.
Well, and the last time we played, we top 3 hours when we're teaching somebody. After that, looking at our plays, we're coming in at around 2 hours, maybe 2 hours 15 if there's 4 of us.
For 3 people, yeah.
Yeah, for 3 people, we're still over 2.
Right. So that's 40 plus minutes per player. Yeah, I agree. Yes, we play slow. Yeah, I think that's one of the takeaways from having done the podcast now is we can be a little more deliberate, and that's fine. But I agree that for us, these games run longer than the advertised 60 to 120. So now versions, and because there's really only one physical version of this game, let's take this opportunity to talk about the implementation on Board Game Arena. How do you guys like that one?
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think it's actually superior to the physical game.
Well, steady now.
I mean, the setup for sure. That's the one thing I dislike about Space Station Phoenix is I feel like I need an organizer because the setup is a lot of work.
Okay, for me, I really like being able to just at a glance see how many aliens are there of each type, how many of each type do each of you have, going over to the ship section and being able to see everybody's ships in one screen and which ones are available. I mean, there's a lot of efficiency that normally you're having to peek around the table and do a lot of tracking on your own that the online implementation just takes care of for you.
Very true.
So what do you find to be less than ideal, Dave, if you're like steady there?
No, it's me. It's not it.
Okay.
It's that this level of game, I don't enjoy asynchronous play as much. It's not as easy because, usually I'm in between meetings at work and I'm going to check real quick. Okay, I got to regrok the game state. What did you do? I'm just going to make my move, So it's more of a shortcoming of mine is that it's really hard for me to kind of keep up with the game state on a game of this level on PGA just with my schedule. So
interesting.
The implementation couldn't be better, and it's great through and through. It's just I don't enjoy this game on async play or any other game at this level really.
Right. The counter argument is, well, okay, great. Agreed. Asynchronous play is kind of difficult.
Yeah.
So synchronous play, we're going to play it in real time. Board Game Arena versus face-to-face.
Well, I still choose face-to-face. I mean, that's...
Okay, I appreciate that. Love you too.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, that's what I want. I want to play with my friends at a table. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I see what you're saying. It does some of the bureaucracy, but this isn't a bureaucracy-heavy game. In some ways it is, like Paul said, with setup. But there are some games that digital implementation just really streamline and just takes a lot of headaches out. In this one, it is helpful. The alien counts and, being able to see everything, that does really help. But I'm not struggling with that on the table to where I need that solution. So,
okay.
But I mean, if you don't have somebody to sit down and play it on BGA and you're going to get the full experience. I mean, really, it's fantastic.
Right. What do you think, Paul?
I bought the game because I played it on BGA.
Okay. Say less. So most recognizable comparison, the highest ranking game that reminds you the most of Space Station Phoenix.
So hard. It's so hard.
All right. Who wants to start this one?
So, I'll throw mine out. I got nothing. I went with Last Will because you're basically trying to destroy your fortune to win the game.
That's a really good pick. I like that.
I'm a little baffled because I don't remember where, and I guess we're going to come to it, but I mentioned Last Will somewhere. That's funny that you bring it up because I was looking at that and I kind of went through in my head because a comparison there with Last Will. Oh, the reason I didn't pick Last Will is I was going to pick it as my less recognizable is that it's not ranked below 750. But what this and Last Will have is that the attrition, that you're starting with a lot. In Last Will, you got a lot of money, and the goal is to lose all that money. And in this case, there's the same attrition. You're never better than at the beginning of the game.
Right. Yeah, that's a good pick. So did you have the same thing, or what did you have, Dave, for most recognizable comparison?
Well, originally I wasn't going to use this because it felt too obvious, but I'm going to say Beyond the Sun, just how thematically strong it is. There is worker placement. I mean, there's a lot of differences. I mean, they're not similar at all. But also the feeling of coming from the same publisher, it has very much the same feel as far as, the components, the level of gameplay, the level of depth. They're on the same corner to me. And then really the only direct connection is space and a little bit of worker placement.
Right.
Well, and Tech Tree is kind of engine building in a way, but yeah.
When you were talking about games that have the starting actions become obsolete, so they don't get deconstructed, but they just better ones become available, and so you don't use the starting ones anymore. Beyond the Sun was the first game that came to mind for me.
Right.
So I like that call out here. I have a game that you guys have been hankering to get to the table, but it's my copy, and we haven't worked it in. So worker placement, building my own engine with increasing complexity in an inhospitable environment, that's Underwater Cities. And that's about as close as I was able to get to this, even though they work completely differently. It's more just a worker placement and building my engine in an inhospitable environment piece of it.
I'm glad you did put it there. I suspect it will go there, but I haven't had a chance to play, but I suspected it would be that same publisher, looks to be the same weight class. My backup here was Anno 1800. I mean, the festival, somewhat similar to the income phase. You're using each other's things. You're not blocking them when you use them, but you're using each other's things and giving them money when you do use it. So
yeah, I think we mentioned Space Station Phoenix in the Anno episode.
Right.
So Gabriel J. Cohn's other game is called Exodus Fleet. We've never played it, but we could if you're ever interested. All right, less recognizable comparison. Paul, do you want to lead us off with the game that you think is...
Or lack thereof.
Or do you want us to save you for last and you can...
How about Exodus Fleet?
That qualifies.
It does. I mean, the only other thing I could think of was Upfront, because you're like putting down cards and then you're picking off the cards on your opponent's side, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
So after you first played the game, did you say, yes, but what does this mean for Upfront?
Replaced by Space Station Phoenix.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I can see where this is going.
Well, Paul took my answer, which is to say I didn't have an answer, just like Paul didn't have an answer, and he stole the low-hanging fruit that was sitting out there. I mean, I want to say Galaxy Trucker, but it's not ranked low enough. It just in that your spaceship is, there's attrition of your spaceship. But I really was, and I looked, deep and wide, and I was really hard. Even though these are all familiar mechanisms, there's not a lot brand new about the game. We talked about there's some new feels, but these are all things we've done in other games.
Not really, though. They're twisted. Space Station Phoenix takes those common things and twists them.
Yeah. Right. And because of that, I could not find a comp. I was even stretching it on our most recognizable comps.
I had an answer here, and it's another one of the long line of Rio Grande's space games, and it's Evacuation. So it was last year's game, because in Evacuation, you are dismantling your economy on your home planet that you're leaving, and then you're reconstructing it on your escape planet or whatever, your target home world. And it's more of an hourglass than a funnel. So if you think of Space Station Phoenix as a funnel of actions that are available, Evacuation starts out with the funnel, but then your options start to expand again as your infrastructure gets transferred. So it's Space Station Phoenix Plus. It's not really the same, but that feel is what made me think of Space Station Phoenix. Space Station Phoenix really does feel unique.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's what we're taking away from this and finding it hard to come up with comps for it.
Another comp that I found just when I was looking around is a game called Cryo, but I haven't played it, so I couldn't speak to it as much, but I did see somebody else mention, and I watched a how to play Cryo, and I could kind of see it. There's some worker placement, and it's Evacuation is what made me think of it, because you're trying to get off the planet or get deep into the planet before it freezes over and everyone dies.
Okay.
Something like that.
Nice. House rules. How would you improve this game? Do you have any house rules that you would amend to the game?
Sound effects?
That's right.
I mean, it's not really a house rule. It's in the rule book, but definitely you don't actually have to move your worker onto somebody else's tableau. You just put one gem there. You don't have to put all the gems over there. Just one gem to show it's been used up. You're good.
Yeah, Paul talked about that. I would try to recreate the alien displays that are on Board Game Arena. So I'll give you an example. Going back to Le Havre and the ability for you to use other players' buildings. One of the challenges I had with that game is you always had to look at other people's tableaus to see which buildings they had available. And instead instead, what I did is I tricked my copy out with a bunch of wooden houses in the different player colors so that all of the buildings could be in a common area, and you would have a different color house to see who you had to pay the toll to be able to use that location. I would like to have a separate mini board that shows you what the running totals are for the aliens. If I were to do anything to tweak this game, it would be to do that.
Well, that's like Paris Connection, which is actually super annoying. To line them up like that so that you can count them. It makes setup of an easy game takes 3 times as long as it should. And sometimes I don't want to play the game because I don't want to line up the trains. That's annoying. But I see what you mean. I do want that there.
No, but I don't want a status board where I actually have all the aliens lined up. I just mean like a number tracker.
Oh.
Like a par chart that says, okay, these aliens part at, there were 18 of them, and now Dave's at 4, Paul's at 5, and I'm at 2.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I would have like a cube of each player color, of which there are none in here, so we'd have to assign player colors to make it work. Like, it would take work to do it.
Yeah.
But I think there's a way that you could do it.
Yeah, just 5 rows of numbers and have bits to track each thing on those
to indicate
those
players.
rows.
Yep.
Yeah.
Similar to the influence tracks on Dune Imperium, Dave.
Yes.
All right. If this game is being played at game night, then what do you want to play afterwards? What's the best double feature game that goes along best with it? I'll just jump in and say that Dave has mentioned mine already because I had Galaxy Trucker. So let's build accommodations for alien guests on board our ship and then hope that they don't break off in a meteor storm. What did you have, Paul?
Beyond the Sun. Let's make it a Rio Grande Games space night.
Oh, that's a heavy night.
Yep, that's my pick, Beyond the Sun.
Okay, that's a good one.
I mean, we have a shelf in the space where we play. We have a shelf dedicated to games of this weight and player count, and it's Beyond the Sun. It's this game when Paul leaves his copy over. It's Lost Ruins of Arnak, which I think is a little longer, a little heavier, maybe. Brian Baru's up there. So we got a bunch of games that are kind of in this weight class that we can kind of bring out. Or when we're looking for something like we've got 2 hours left, that's the shelf we look to. But the crown jewel in there, I think, is Beyond the Sun.
Yeah. All right. So what feature of the game still stands out to you? What has aged the best in all of the 2 years that this game has been released?
Well, my favorite part is the diplomacy track.
Okay.
I never feel comfortable knowing when to stop investing in diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Because I always want to invest more, but sometimes it's not worth the tempo or the cost because the cost keeps going up and up.
And you don't know how many rounds there are left for you to get any return on that.
Exactly. The later the game goes, the less your return's going to be.
And it gets pretty expensive up at the top.
Mm-hmm.
It does. That's why when Paul bought that sector in our current game, I was mad because I love that sector.
Yeah, that's amazing.
How about you, Dave? Which feature of the game stands out to you?
I put the income phase. I mean, we've talked about this in a few games, the festival action, the income action, that phase of the game, Obsession has it where you take an off turn in some ways, and it's the timing of it is what I still find interesting. And in this game, maybe more so than other games. In other games, it's when I'm just out of stuff and I'm forced to do it. Right. In this game, it's a little more tactical about, maybe I'll just do it now. Maybe I can eke out a few more turns. And I'm really enjoying that decision point.
Nice. So I think it's been a while since we had a game where each of us liked a different aspect of it. I think it's another testament to the uniqueness of Space Station Phoenix. Because I had the idea of funneling your actions by dismantling your ships. I really like that aspect of the game, and that's unique for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what feature of the game now disappoints? What hasn't aged as well? Again, in all of the 2 years that this game has been out. If you don't have an answer, that's fine.
No, for me, it's the first player advantage because of the end game trigger.
Mm-hmm. Mine is, it's hard to say if this is something that disappoints in the game, but it's the ability to get out of sync. When somebody takes the ships that you need, and I've been in games where I just cannot get a diplomacy action. I can't get that timing right. And every time I do have the gems, everybody else has taken it. And, I misplay that a few times, I'm out of the game. And it's hard to say that's a shortcoming of the game. That's just my playing of the game. But those sort of missteps, maybe rolling the dice and you don't get any water, it's like it could really kick your tempo. And I find those really frustrating plays. Not as much in the game that we played last night. Terminus. That one, there's a couple of times where, you drank my milkshake by taking one of those little hexes. So I thought it was there for me. And you're like, wait, hold on. Before I finish my turn, I'm going to redo that. I'll take that hex and like that. And then, Greg did something once that, gave me 1 cone instead of 4. And that might just be inexperience, but it really just put my whole game out of step. And it took me so long to get back into some sort of flow. And that can happen in this game too, where I get out of step because my ship's not there, or that I need to do this one first. I don't quite have enough coins, and I have a tough time getting back into flow. And by the time I do, everyone's 2 turns ahead of me. And again, I don't think it's a shortcoming of the game. That's just experience in the game, because I'm doing that less and less the more we play.
Right. Okay. I can still see what you mean, especially if everyone starts jumping in and then the diplomacy option is not there. I think that's why there's also the neutral ship, but that only lasts as long until someone decommissions one of their diplomacy ships. So you could still find yourself in a situation where there's just not one available because 2 of them have been recycled.
Right.
For me, the thing I didn't like, and this isn't saying that I hate this about the game, but if I had to pick something, it's there are a lot of little bureaucracy steps, and this goes beyond the remembering to take the diplomacy bonuses. There's also remembering that you have to pay a gem if you're going to relocate a resident in your station, or tracking all of the little abilities on the modules you've built. Like it's easy to overlook, oh yeah, over in this module that I built earlier in the game, I forgot that I'm supposed to be giving myself a point or something like that, when I take income. Whatever the case may be, there are a lot of little details that are easy to lose track of in this game.
Especially details in other people's space stations. So when you think you've locked up the majority here and like, oh, he's got a special ability over there that you forgot about, that he can get 2 aliens or, whatever, an extra spot to put him or some sort of thing that like, I didn't even realize you could do that.
Right. So did Space Station Phoenix replace a previous game for you, Dave?
I don't know why this is my answer, because it's not a close comparison. Woodcraft. So for Woodcraft felt like it should have been this weight and game length, but for some reason it's just so much more. And I really do like Woodcraft, but it's long and there's a lot of extra going on. Mm-hmm. And we played it a few times, and then Space Station Phoenix was around, and they're not really comparable games, but I'd rather play Space Station Phoenix.
Well, they're close enough, because that was my answer too.
Oh, okay. So I'm on to something.
You are, because you develop your capabilities by drafting and then building up your engine and completing your orders, and it just kind of fizzled for us after those first few plays. Paul, what did you have?
For me, it replaced Carnegie.
Ah, okay.
You already answered that. Something else replaced Carnegie, I thought. Everything replaces Carnegie.
I'm pretty sure I said Space Station Phoenix back in the Carnegie episode.
Oh, you're right. That's where you said it. Yeah. So this is a callback.
That's right.
Nice.
They're both very low luck games with path dependency, and to me, the gameplay feels similar.
Yes, I can definitely see that. That's a good call.
Yeah, very good call. I like that.
All right. So has this game since been replaced? And if so, by what? I don't have a replacement here.
Yeah, not for me.
Same here. It's currently in our hot rotation.
Right. And I said this during our pod on Beyond the Sun. Like, Beyond the Sun hasn't been replaced by Space Station Phoenix, but for me, they stand on the same corner. Like, we're playing them both. They feel similar to me. There may end up being a winner that ends up staying with us.
There's room in my heart for both.
Way to stick with the analogy. All right. Soundtrack. What music would you want to listen to while playing?
Well, I've mentioned the video game Startopia many times, and a remake was made called Space Startopia, which I cannot recommend to people, but I can recommend the original soundtrack, which in my opinion is perfect for Space Station Phoenix. So Space Startopia OST is my answer.
Okay, I like it. So Dave, I'll jump in here. The whole idea of a space station, in orbit and people going to it and staying on it, for whatever reason, the mental imagery I get is from 2001: A Space Odyssey. There's a whole sequence in there where they're showing zero-G shuttle flight going up to the space station, and it's all set to the Blue Danube Waltz by Johann Strauss. And so that's my answer here is I always have that vision in my brain when we're playing this game, and I'm kind of humming it to myself as we go.
And they're having cocktails and sitting in the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm thinking not along the lines of a bustling hub, bustling space hotel. I'm
Right.
thinking along the lines of, out in space with your ships and tearing things down and building the space station. So I'm going with the soundtrack to the movie Arrival, which kind of captures kind of the beautiful emptiness of space, or, kind of the awesomeness and the kind of ominously terrifying at the same time. So I guess I'm thinking more of like a deep station Phoenix more than, near Earth station.
Okay. So rating on Board Game Geek scale of 1 to 10 now, no halvesies. How would you rate Space Station Phoenix? And I'm going to go first because I have the lowest rating. I currently have it as a 7. I think it has the potential to grow from there, but that's where it currently sits for me. And the 7's still a decent game, and I'm enjoying playing it. Dave, what do you have?
Well, I'm conflicted on this one. I'm like 7/8.
No halvesies?
Well, yeah. So I feel like I need more time with the game to give it a solid 8. It's definitely a 7 with 8 leanings. I'll give it that. So right now, I'm going to keep it at a 7. But like I said earlier, I feel like
it's a rising 7.
A rising 7. There you go. Yeah. Because I feel like layers of the game are still being revealed, and I have, quite a few plays, and I'm seeing, oh wait, there's different paths to metal. Like Paul said, he played this game where he's not disabling one ship.
Right.
Finding these different paths, and your hub kind of tells you which way to go. But if I'm having a problem with this, there's another way I can solve that problem. So I'm starting to see, layers underneath, and so that's starting to rise it up a little bit. But I don't know if I'm at an 8 just yet.
All right. And Paul?
I rated a 9.
All right.
Really like the game.
Okay. So then is it replayable, and how soon would you want to revisit it? Paul, keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I am pretty much always in a game on Board Game Arena, and I really enjoy playing in person as well.
Nice. Dave?
Like I said, it's in heavy rotation right now. I can play this game weekly, and I'll be happy. I'm not getting sick of it. I'm just learning more and getting better at it. I can see this kind of settling down to, once a month, once every other month kind of thing. But right now it's heavy rotation. It's when we get together, it's one of the top 3 games I want to play.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if I could play it weekly, but I could play it every other week. And it's definitely replayable, and we've been enjoying it so far. I could probably play it on Board Game Arena more often than that, but I think I'd really like to try the synchronous BGA version and see how that goes. All right. And with that, like the game that we're currently playing, Dave has built his 9th module. So for our next episode, we'll be exploring and observing planetside on Earth back in the early to mid 1800s. So thanks for being available tonight, guys. This was enjoyable to get through this one. This was a tough one.
Yes.
And like I said, I think it's a testament to the uniqueness of this particular game that it threw some wrenches our way.
It almost defies categorization. Yeah.
Well, that was something we talked about with Clans, is that there's something unique, especially those older games, that has a clever element or something you hadn't seen before, you've seen before as a new take. And this does kind of remind me of those sort of kind of award winners back then. But like we said, people are sleeping on this game. I mean, BGG could probably tell us how many owners there are, how many plays are being logged. And I don't think it's much. I don't see anybody talking about it. And it's a drag because it's such a good game.
Totally agree. All right. Have a good evening.
Good night.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Replayable. Support for our podcast comes from listeners like you. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and leave a review wherever you listen to us. Thank you for your support. Come and talk about board games with us at replayable.fm or on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook as ReplayableFM. You can also join our team at patreon.com/replayable. We welcome your feedback, which is the only way that we are going to get better. You can get in touch with us via email at feedback@replayable.fm. And if you're interested in sponsoring us, then please contact us at sponsors@replayable.fm.